Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. My name is Yasa Malina, and today I will explain about the element of sign. So let's move on to the first material. First material is the saucer model. Before I explain the saucer model, I will explain the sign first. So sign is take the form of words, image, sounds, flavors, egg, or objects, but such things have no intrinsic meaning and become sign only when we invest them with meaning. Anything can be a sign as long as someone interprets it as signifying something. So first, the Saussure model. Saussure defined a sign as being composed of a signifier, signified, and a signified or signify. A linguistic sign is not a link between a thing and a name, but between a concept, signified, and a sound pattern or signifier. If we take a linguistic example, the word open, when it is invested with meaning by someone who encounters it on a shelf doorway, is a sign consisting of a signifier, the word open, a signified concept that the shop is open for business. The same signifier, the word open, could stand for a different signified and thus be a different sign if it were on a page without inside a leaf, page to open other. Next, about two sides of page. Saussure stressed that sound and tone are a signifier and the signified were as inseparable as the two sides of a piece of paper. They were intimately linked in the mind by an associative link. Each triggers the other. Within the context of spoken language, a sign could not consist of sound without sense or of sense without sound. Next, about the relational system. Saussure did not define sign in terms of some essential or intrinsic nature. For Saussure, signs refer primarily to each other. Within the language system, everything depends on relation. No sign makes sense on its own but only in relation to the other sign. Both signifier and signified are purely relational entities. Saussure himself referred to sound and tone as two distinct but correlated planes. Saussure used an analogy with the game of chess, noting that the value of each piece depends on its position on the chessboard. Next, about arbitrariness. Saussure, semiotician, emphasized that there is no necessary intrinsic, direct, or inevitable relationship between the signifier and the signified. Saussure stressed the arbitrariness of the sign, more specifically, the arbitrariness of the link between the signifier and the signified. Saussure stressed that there is no inherent, essential, transparent, self-evident, or natural connection between the signifier and the signified, between the sound of a word and the concept to which it refers. No specific signifier is naturally more suited to a signifiant than any other signifier. In principle, any signifier could represent any signified. Okay, next we move on to the Peirce model. Peirce sign theory or semiotic is an account of signification, representation, reference, and meaning. Although sign theories have a long history, Charles Sanders Peirce is well known as a pioneer of pragmatism doctrine who has provided the basic in the general theory of sign through his writings and texts that have been compiled 25 years after his death in a single comprehensive piece of work entitled Offers Complex. Unlike Saussure has introduced the term semiology, Peirce proposed the term semiotic, which according to him is synonymous with the concept of logic that focus on the knowledge of human thinking process as portrayed in his writing. Logic, in its general sense, is, as I believe I have shown, only another name for semiotic, the quasi-necessary or formal doctrine of sign. By describing the doctrine as quasi-necessary or formal, I mean that we observe the characters of such sign as we know, and from such an observation by a process which I will not object to naming abstraction, we are led to statement eminently fallible and therefore in one sense by no means necessary as to what must be characters of all sign used by a scientific intelligence, that is to say by an intelligence capable of learning by experience. The main principle containing Peirce's theory are the human mind and sign boundaries, the three-dimensional system, and the relativity regarding the three typologies or taxonomies of sign, icon, index, and symbol. For Peirce, developing a thoroughgoing theory of sign was a central philosophical and intellectual presupposition. The importance of semiotic for peace is wide-ranging, as he himself said. It has never been in my power to study anything. Mathematics, ethics, metaphysics, gravitation, thermodynamics, optics, chemistry, comparative anatomy, astronomy, psychology, phonetics, economics, the history of science with men and women, wine, meteorology, except as a study of semiotic. Peirce continually returned to and developed his ideas about sign and semiotic, and there are three broadly delineable accounts. Account developed through the 1880 appears to develop earlier accounts and generate new, more complex sign theories. However, despite this change, Peirce's ideas on the basic structure of sign and signification remains largely uniform through his development. Consequently, it is useful to begin with an account of the basic structure of sign according to Peirce. Next, we move on to basic sign structure from Peirce. In one of his many definitions of sign, Peirce writes, I define a sign as anything which is so determined by something else called its object, and so determines an effect upon a person, which effect I call its interpretant, that the latter is thereby immediately determined by the former. 1. The signifying elements of sign. The very first thing to note is that there are some potential terminological difficulties here. We appear to be saying that there are three elements of sign, one of which is the sign. This is confusing and does not fully capture Peirce's idea. Strictly speaking, for Peirce, we are interested in the signifying element, and it's not the sign as a word that signifies. In speaking of the sign as the signifying element, then he is more properly speaking of the sign refined to this element most crucial to its functioning as a signifier. Number 2, the object. Just as with the sign, not every characteristic of the object is relevant to signification. Only certain features of an object enable a sign to signify it. For Peirce, the relationship between the object of sign and the sign that represent it is one of determination. The object determines the sign. The idea is that the object imposes certain parameters that a sign must fall within if it is to represent that object. Just as Peirce 12 signs could be classified according to whether their sign facial function in virtue of qualities, existential facts, or convention and laws. His 12 signs were similarly classifiable according to how their object function in signification. Recall that for peers, object determine their sign. Number 3, the interpretant. First, although we have characterized the interpretant as the understanding we reach of some sign-object relation, it is perhaps more properly thought of as the translation or development of the original sign. The idea is that the interpretant provides a translation of the sign, allowing us a more complex understanding of the sign object. Second, just as with the sign or object relation, Peirce believes the sign or interpretant relation to be one of determination. The sign determines an interpretant. For Peirce, then any instance of signification contains a sign vessel, an object, and interpretant. Moreover, the object determines the sign by placing constraint which any sign must meet if it is to signify the object. Consequently, the sign signifies its object only in virtue of some of its features. Additionally, the sign determines an interpretant by focusing our understanding on certain features of the signifying relation between sign and object. This enables us to understand the object of the sign more fully. So that's all from me. So we can conclude that Saussure defined a sign as being composite of signifier and a signified. And then the Peirce was especially interested in how people use sign make meaning in everyday interaction. He created a three-part schema for categorizing the role that sign play in meaning making. Peirce claimed that sign can play the following roles: iconic, sign, and resemble what they represent. And then index, sign that have a direct causal relationship to that they represent, and symbolic, sign that have an arbitrary relationship to what they represent. So that's all from me. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.